of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning and Development. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. An exception to this rule is a combined report which consolidates the public meeting and comprehensive reports. These applications are deemed by staff as straightforward and routine. This business practice has been in place for a number of years and is received by the applicants as efficient customer service and effective use of committee time. Please note that staff use discretion in determining if an application can be a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process. Public meeting reports are provided to inform the public of all relevant information. Information gathered is then referred back to planning and development staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to planning committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. This committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council. City Council has the final say on the applications from the city's perspective. Following council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kingston before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. And our only public meeting before us tonight is regarding 809 and 847 Development Drive. So we'll begin with that. Is there a presenter? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee and members of the public. My name is Josh Berry. I'm a planner with IBI Group. We are acting as the authorized planning agent for 809 Development Drive, Inc., the owner of the properties municipally known as 809 Development Drive and 847 Development Drive in the City of Kingston. I'll provide a brief overview of the proposed development in my PowerPoint presentation for members of the committee and the public. We look forward to receiving comments from members of the public and the committee to help inform our applications moving forward. So the applicant is requesting a zoning bylaw amendment to construct a 4-story residential apartment building comprised of 158 apartment dwelling units and a 3-story building comprised of 18 stacked townhome units. Now, there may be a revision to the apartment building to increase it to 168 units to provide for more affordable housing options. This is based on a discussion that we had with City of Kingston housing staff, and that would involve the conversion of 2-bedroom units into 1-bedroom units. There's no proposal to increase the building footprint or the height of the building as a result of that conversion. There's an image of the subject lands for the committee and the public's reference. An image of the site. So the development is going to be confined to the areas that are already zoned as residential as part of the previous development application on these lands. The environmental protection areas will remain as such. They will remain protected. And as you can see, the subject lands are located between an existing low-rise residential subdivision. There's commercial retail uses on the other side of the street, and there is employment lands further to the east, including the vacant Studio 801 lands, which are designated for industrial uses for the time being. So, as mentioned earlier, proposing 158 dwelling units in a that's a typo, it should be 4-story residential apartment building, and 18 stacked townhouse units, parking provided on site for a townhouse and apartment block. The parking will be located in the rear and side yard. And the bicycle parking will be provided in every single unit for a ratio of 1:1. And common amenity areas comprised of a library, a gym, rooftop patio, outdoor space will be provided as part of the development. There's an image of the site plan for the apartment building. Of course, there are full-size copies of these drawings available online through the Dash system or with staff. We also have the site plan for the townhome development. As you can see, there are 6 units, which will have 3 units in each of those buildings, for a total of 18. Parking will be provided on site and will meet the requirements of the bylaw. There's some elevations of the apartment buildings as well. Again, these drawings are available on Dash. Elevations for the townhomes. Our team has done quite a bit of work on this project. We've submitted supporting studies in support of the zoning bylaw amendment application, as well as the site plan control application for the apartment building. We prepared a planning justification report, conceptual site plan and architectural plans, servicing and stormwater management report, a traffic impact study to evaluate traffic in the area, a noise impact assessment to evaluate any noise associated with adjacent uses, including the CN rail line, a natural heritage evaluation to evaluate the sensitive features on the property. There was a natural heritage evaluation done as part of the previous zoning approval. We had asked our ecologist to provide an addendum to that EIS, which has been provided to staff and the CRCA for their review. An archaeology impact assessment was done, which was cleared by the Ministry of Culture, Sport, and Tourism. There's a tree inventory and preservation plan was done and is available on Dash with part of the site plan control application. There was an arborist report done in support of that tree inventory and preservation plan. We've done a phase 1 and phase 2 ESA and a geotechnical study. So now I'm going to provide a planning overview. The proposed development, in our opinion, is consistent with the intent of the 2014 provincial policy statement. It redevelops an underutilized lot located within the settlement area of Kingston. The PPS requires planning authorities to ensure that there is an efficient pattern of land use, there is a coordinated approach to arriving at land use decisions, and that the development contributes to the long-term economic prosperity of the municipality. PPS supports healthy and livable communities by redeveloping an underutilized lot within the urban boundary. The proposed development will accommodate a range and mix of residential uses by introducing an alternative housing option to the west end of Kingston. The proposed development will contribute to the city's housing supply by adding an additional 158, possibly 168 if we do end up doing the conversion. And the proposed development will intensify an underutilized lot, therefore helping the city meet its intensification goal of increasing the urban residential density by a minimum of 9% by 2026. Subject lands will use the existing municipal infrastructure, sanitary and water. And the subject lands are located within walking distance to public transit, commercial amenity, and open space areas and schools. The portion of the subject lands that are being developed are designated as residential. There is an environmental protection designation on the lands. Again, we are not proposing to develop within the environmental protection designation, and will adhere to all applicable setbacks. The OP identifies high density as 75 units per net hectare. The development is approximately 87 to 89 units per net hectare. There are criteria tests that are identified in the City of Kingston official plan to evaluate high density proposals. It is our opinion that we are consistent with that criteria. The property is located on the periphery of a low or medium density residential neighborhood. The subject lands are located within walking distance of commercial areas and include a plaza located directly across the street from the development, and it is within a short distance of the Riocan Center and the Dardaners Town Center. The subject lands are also located within close distance of several parks, including Ashton Park, Hudson Park. The open space lands are not proposed to be developed and could serve as an amenity area to future residents, visitors, and the existing neighborhood. Development Drive is classified as a local road. However, the subject lands are located in close proximity, approximately 800 meters, to Dardaners Road, which is an arterial commercial road. Development Drive is also serviced by local transit, as there is a Kingston transit stop within 100 meters of the subject land, providing convenient access to other areas of the city. So the City of Kingston official plan lays out some tests and criteria to define compatibility. It defines compatibility as the ability of various land uses, buildings, sites, or urban design treatments to coexist with one another in a manner that will not have an undue physical or functional adverse effect on existing or proposed development in the area, or pose an unacceptable risk to the environment or human health. Land use compatibility matters include shadowing. The proposed 4-story apartment building and 3-story townhouses are sufficiently set back, in our opinion, from the adjacent low-density residential neighborhood, and the 3-story townhouses are sufficiently set back from the nearby residential neighborhood and the street to ensure there are no negative impacts in terms of shadowing on adjacent development. Loss of privacy due to intrusive overlook. The proposed development is not anticipated to create a loss of privacy due to intrusive overlook. Appropriate screening and setbacks will be used to minimize potential for intrusive overlook. Appropriate screenings and setbacks will be used to minimize potential for that overlook, and the rooftop amenity space is oriented to face towards the creek, away from the residential neighborhood. Increased levels of light, pollution, noise, odor, dust, or vibration. A noise study was undertaken, which has identified mitigation measures for mechanical equipment satisfying provincial requirements. A photometric plan, an external lighting plan, was also submitted as part of the site plan control application. That document is available for the public to review on Dash if they have any questions about the lighting. The photometric plan did indicate that lighting pollution levels will be controlled not to go beyond the property line. Increased level of traffic. The proposed number of parking spaces has increased from the existing zoning. We're providing more parking than what the zoning bylaw actually requires. The traffic study concluded that the proposed development will produce a minimum quantity of additional traffic flows and that the existing network has sufficient capacity to accommodate this development. This report has been reviewed by city engineering staff and have agreed with its conclusions. Environmental damage. The proposed changes are not anticipated to result in negative environmental impacts. The proposed development will be located outside of the required setbacks from the creek and the wetland. So now I'm just going to go over the zoning. The subject lands are currently zoned as a site-specific residential 438 zone, And that is a result of the previous development proposal for these lands for 8 individual apartment units and a clubhouse. That has now since changed to the development that you see before you tonight. The proposed zoning that we're proposing is we're going to amend some of the provisions of the existing R438 zone and create a new site-specific R4 zone for the townhouse block to facilitate this type of urban form that improves the pedestrian environment. So we're going to create new site-specific standards for the lot frontage to recognize the existing deficit in the frontage. We currently only have 20 meters on the 847 parcel, but that is sufficient to provide a driveway. The proposed driveway has been designed in a manner that provides efficient ingress and egress to and from the apartment building and townhouse building, and has been reviewed by engineering staff to be located in the proper spot. Building height, the applicant is proposing to increase the height for both the townhouse building and apartment building. The proposed development has been designed and placed in a manner that will ensure the increased height does not have an adverse impact on the streetscape or adjacent low-density residential neighborhood. Although it's not the same as the predominantly 2-story buildings in the adjacent low-density neighborhood, compatibility is not defined by sameness, but rather to exist in harmony with the existing neighborhood. The proposed apartment building will not be intrusive to the adjacent development, in our opinion. It's also important to note that the subject lands do have a lower elevation than the existing subdivision that's adjacent to it. The applicant is proposing to increase the maximum density of the proposed apartment building development from 75 units per net hectare is our current cap, and we're proposing to go to 87 units per net hectare. The majority of the site will remain undeveloped, and the massing of the development remains at a low level, and the Z shape of the building allows the building to be placed in a manner that allows development to take advantage of the views of natural features on the site without intruding on neighboring properties. We're going to amend the zoning bylaw to permit a parking area for the apartment block in what is technically considered the front yard. However, the parking area will be screened from Development Drive by the townhouse block. A children's area will not be provided, as the amenity space will be provided in common amenity areas instead. Common amenity areas include a library, party room, rooftop patio, and an outdoor amenity area. These areas can be used by residents, including families. Front yard depth, a request to reduce the front yard setback is also being requested for the townhouse block. This request will allow the townhouses to be brought closer to the street, creating a more urban, pedestrian-friendly development with parking at the rear. To conclude, the proposed development is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the official plan policies to encourage the development of an underutilized lot in the settlement area. The proposed development is compatible with the existing neighborhood and serves as an appropriate transition between the low-density residential neighborhood to the west and the industrial uses to the east. It is our opinion that the proposed development constitutes good planning as within the public interest. That concludes my presentation for this evening. We look forward to receiving comments from the committee and the public.
Thank you. I'll now turn to our planners for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can confirm that the application was noticed per the requirements of the Planning Act. There has been signage posted on site related to tonight's meeting, as well as the active site plan and consent applications, as the applicant alluded to. In addition to that, the notification was mailed out to the 79 property owners that are located within 120 meters of the site. Staff have had communication with several members of the public at our offices to clarify certain aspects of the proposal, as well as received 3 letters of correspondence, which have been included as your added tonight in the addendum. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now to committee. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Hutchison, and then Councillor Kiley.
First of all, the tower, it's 25 meters high at the peak?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay. Now, how many floors is this? It said 5, you said 4. I count 5.
It's technically 4 stories. There's a bottom floor, but
Yes.
for the purposes of the zoning, it's considered to be 4 stories.
But the first floor is inhabited, right?
That's correct, yes.
to be inhabited? Okay,
Yep.
okay. And, all right, so that's all I've got for right now. I had another question, but you just answered it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. And then Kevin Zanuck.
Chair, and through you, I have a number of questions. I'll ask some now, and I'll come back to some after residents have spoken to this, because I've met with many of the residents as their counselor to discuss their concerns on this development. The first, I'm wondering if we could talk a bit about the lighting plan for the site, particularly along the southwestern border of the property where the proposed parking lot will go. That's in the backyard of many of the residents who I've mentioned. And in what way will the light not go beyond the property line? You had mentioned that in your presentation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the, so we have a plan, a photometrics plan was prepared by an engineer in support of the site plan control application. Members of the public are able to review that plan. The calculations that were done by the engineer indicated that beyond the property line, it won't be more than 0.1 lux. The lighting is more located in the central portion. You can see where it is on the lighting plan, but it is at an acceptable level to ensure that there's no impact on neighboring properties.
All right. You also mentioned the potential for screening and lessen that further. On the diagram that I'm looking at on page 50 of the report, I don't see any indication between the backyards of the residents and the parking lot of trees or a berm or anything that would prevent further light flow. Is that a possibility? Is that something that could be changed?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so there's going to be a buffer provided between the parking area and the residents. We are currently working through the site plan control application. As part of that, there's going to be a landscape plan, and the landscape plan will likely speak to vegetation. We can certainly explore further measures if the public has some concerns regarding that to be incorporated into the landscape plan.
Excellent. So 2 more for now. I want to pick up on my colleagues' questions concerning size and height and the bulking of the building. You had mentioned that a lot of the neighborhood nearby are 2 stories, and some of them are, but actually the majority of the properties that abut the proposed development are in fact bungalows. So the 4 to 5 stories of this building is 4 to 5 times taller than most of those properties. So I'm wondering if that changes your assessment of compatibility, knowing that it's not just 2 times bigger, but it's 4 times bigger.
Yes, through you, thank you for the question. The professional planner, I'm supposed to evaluate whether something is compatible based on not numerical value, but rather based on whether it has an adverse impact or not. We believe the way that the building has been set back and is designed is appropriate and can exist in relative harmony with the adjacent 1-story to 2-story buildings in the area.
All right, I'll leave that for now. And then my final question at this point is about the request to waive the children's play area. You had mentioned that perhaps they could enjoy the library in the building or other family spaces. In my estimation, the ability to play outside is much different than to recreate indoors, and that has its own value, and I'm glad that there will be a library space should it go forward. But I'm wondering if you could speak further to your rationale for wanting to waive this. Is it only that there will be indoor space, or are there other reasons?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. Yes, I'm glad you raised that. The children's amenity area, we're removing that provision because it was more of a technical requirement. There is going to be outdoor amenity space provided. In fact, the revised site plan that we have worked on as part of the site plan control application will actually show those outdoor amenity areas highlighted. And just to add some context to that, that residential area will be away from the neighbors, so there won't be any noise or anything like that. We'll be happy to share that with members of the public.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes, staff had some comments.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just was hopeful that I could jump in and add something to the applicant's response to Councillor Kiley's inquiry as it relates to planting or berming along the adjacent property line that butts up to the rear yards of Boxwood. Staff have had, as mentioned, conversations with neighbors in the area, and in the draft bylaw that accompanies your report in front of you tonight, staff have included the requirement of a planting strip along that western property line per the definition of the bylaw. So as alluded to by the applicant, it is something that would further get into in site plan control, but I wanted to point out to you that the fact we've gone largely above and beyond with respect to building it right into the zoning and the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now turn to Councillor Zanuck and then Councillor Hill.
Thanks, your chair. Through you, a question about Trudell Road, and thanks very much for now aligning this development with Trudell, because when we saw this come forward with a different applicant in 2013, that was one thing that the members, like the residents in that area, had wanted, was not to be out of alignment. They thought it would be better. So did your traffic study, do they recommend a four-way stop or anything there, or is it just going to be Trudell and your development, and they'll just have a stop sign, but everyone on Development Drive will still be driving a street away?
Yes, through the chair, I do recall that comment coming up, and I do recall asking our traffic engineer to look at it. I just don't happen to remember what his recommendation is, but we can share that information with staff.
I think a four-way stop would be, because if you're going to have any children living in your development, they'll probably go to Trudell School. They'll have to cross over Development Drive, and to have a four-way stop, that will be the legal crossing way without the city having to hire a crossing guard. And so, great. When it was owned by the other applicant, for the lands just south of you, you know how the creek, right, is then going to be going along the east side, and then south of you, they were going to look at maybe doing a boardwalk feature. Is that still on the table? Do you know?
Through you, Mr. Chair, actually, we've been having extensive conversation with the Parks Division Department about establishing an active transportation trail, a north-south active transportation trail between the rail line and Development Drive, as a lot of local kids and members of the public use that as a shortcut. And so we are evaluating that further, and the applicant will making sure if there's any crossings in the creek that it's done in accordance with CRCA regulations.
Thank you. And let's see. When I just looked on Dash, so when the EIS was done in 2013, the Conservation, the CRCA, they had some recommendations to improve the EIS. Then in tonight's Dash, I see how there is like an addendum by Ecological Services submitted in the fall of 2018, building on the EIS, but I don't see the CRCA comments. So we don't have the CRCA comments back then, because one of their recommendations was to keep some of the trees right in the buffer, because the CRCA believed that the trees could help with the erosion, that the trees right at the creek wouldn't all have to be removed. And the other thing the conservation area had said about the 2013 EIS was to have a bigger setback from the creek. They were talking about 15 meters from the edge. So with your proposal, do you know if those things are being looked at or have been worked in?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I'll be honest with you, I'm not fully aware of everything that was done as part of the previous application. I know that staff had worked with CRCA as well as the previous applicant to build in special provisions and setbacks to address their comments. So the open space zone that you see on the subject lands is actually an incorporation of the floodplain setback as well as the total erosion setback and the wetland setback. We can certainly have that conversation with Ecological Services to make sure that those comments are addressed. With respect to the trees, the City of Kingston tree bylaw does not allow you to remove trees in the environmental protection area. So we do plan on maintaining those trees within the environmental protection area. Our arborist report actually didn't even evaluate the trees in there because we don't plan on touching those ones. So we are going to try and retain as much of the wooded area as we can. And that will go well with the trail that the Parks Division is wanting, so there'll be a nice tree trail.
Thank you. And then just like my last question, well, So the addendum to the EIS that was done by Ecological Services in October 2018, they still didn't see turtles. So I don't know if, I guess none of us were here back then when we had the public meetings, except for maybe some members in the audience, right? But I know that some people at that very last planning committee that we had said that because they live there, they've seen turtles. And so the EIS addendum, again, did not have any mention of turtles, which is a rather disappointment, but thank you.
Thank you, and I believe Sted had a comment on one of the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just wanted to provide very quick comment as it relates to the question of the revised EIS addendum that was received in 2018 and how that relates to commentary from the CRCA and the absence of that commentary on DASH. It's standard practice through the processing of zoning amendment applications where technical commentary internal to the organization and with external advisors, such as the CRCA, are not made public via the DASH system. That said, the application is still subject to technical review. It has been circulated to the CRCA so that they can ensure that the 2018 EIS addendum achieves its requirements. And we will be incorporating that into our review before or within a report that is brought back to you with a recommendation outlining its conformance with the official plan policies.
And presume that will go up on DASH as soon as, or very shortly after we receive it?
The comprehensive, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Next question through you, the staff. This was zoned for 2-story, is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I did not do the zoning amendment personally in 2013. I believe it was considered quote unquote a big house, and the max height was approximately 12 or 13 meters. So 3 stories approximately if we're measuring that out into stories.
So we're effectively sort of doubling that on the main building, but if, and maybe you can just tell me what the orientation is for the tower part of it?
Yes, so the tower is going to be Z-shaped, so the majority of the units are going to be actually oriented towards the creek.
Right. I'm talking, sorry, about the extended, there's one part of the roof that looks to be extended beyond the 4 stories.
Yes, there is a penthouse. Not sure where exactly that is on the plan. We'll have to get back to you on that. I do know that the rooftop amenity area, which is where that rooftop patio is going to be oriented towards the creek. So there's not going to be people on the rooftop patio overlooking someone's backyard.
So I'm looking here at 848 Trudell, and which would be across the road from the building. Mm-hmm. Presumably, when they moved in there, they had their expectation would be for about a 2 to 3 story building, and really, when you look at the height of the tower, it's almost 6 stories. That would be a pretty significant difference to what people might have expected when they moved into that area. Would you agree?
Again, I evaluated the proposal and I believe that it is compatible with existing development based on my opinion that it's not going to have an adverse impact.
So one more question, just in terms of the amenity area in the tower. Mm-hmm. So that also includes, I think you said an outdoor patio as well then?
It's going to include an outdoor rooftop patio, yes. What will be helpful for members of the public in the committee is that we provide further details on the rooftop area and where that's going to be oriented, and that information can be shared and uploaded through Dash. And we're happy to entertain dialogue and how that can be better designed to be more compatible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Could I ask the Vice Chair to take the chair for questions?
Yeah, I take the G.
Thank you very much. I'm just looking over the relief requests, and a couple of questions. Some of these may be for staff. Wouldn't there be a requirement for some parkland or payment in lieu of parkland on such a proposal as this? Perhaps you can address that.
Yes, absolutely. It's not a requirement that's prescribed in zoning bylaw number 7626, for example. That's why you wouldn't necessarily see it on my page 7, the site statistics table where it proposes or shows the relief. It is a requirement of our Parks Division, and the applicant previous in the conversation tonight made reference to a trail connection north-south, which is generally in conformity with the active transportation master plan to establish that desire line and connection through, which is active currently, yet unformalized trail system. The conversation, as you know, is still under technical review, but the commentary can be parkland conveyance or an easement option or cash in lieu of parkland, and that's still being discussed internally through the technical review.
Thank you. Thank you. My other question is regarding guest room, the guest rooms that are included in the 18-unit townhouses. Is our, and I may be incorrect here, but isn't our amenity space calculated on a per bedroom basis, and or is that just in apartments?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Our amenity space requirements, recently updated 2017, are on a per unit basis. It's 18.5 square meters per dwelling unit across the city, with the exception of the Williamsville Main Street corridor, which is 10 square meters per dwelling unit. So it is in fact on a unit basis as opposed to a bedroom basis.
Thank you, I appreciate it. My other question, and this may be the former public educator in me, I'm curious why, this proposal would seem to fit, would be a family-friendly development. So why are we asking, if I'm reading this correctly, to get total forgiveness for a play area? Even if we were to rationalize and say this is going to be a scene primarily marketed to seniors, the reality is seniors will have grandchildren coming to visit them as well. Why would we ask for total forgiveness on the play area requirement?
Through you, Mr. Chair, children's play amenity area is a very specific defined term in the City of Kingston zoning bylaw that we feel would not meet the needs of what we're providing in terms of amenity area. It's not to say that there's not going to be outdoor amenity space for children to enjoy, and we would be happy to share more information on what that outdoor amenity space would look like. But we're happy to talk to staff about that. Maybe there's a more appropriate way we can treat that.
Yeah. Yes, if comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. A minute ago, when I made reference to the updates to the on-site amenity requirements that the city undertook in 2017, during that modification, the City of Kingston, citywide, through its 5 zoning bylaws, removed the requirement for children's play space, specifically as defined children's play space. The 18.5 square meters of on-site amenity area that was deemed to be the most appropriate number on a per unit basis across the city was said to include what would have then previously considered children's play space. So we've essentially taken those 2 requirements that were previously separated out as amenity and children's play space and consolidated that into one numeric number of 18.5 of on-site amenity space. Why you're specifically seeing the relief sought in this application is the 2013 approval that was for the big house, quote unquote, was then needed to comply and conform to those previous provisions that included play space, children's play space. Essentially, this zoning amendment in front of us tonight with respect to children's play space is more generally in conformance with the way in which we're regulating amenity and play area through our zoning bylaws moving forward.
Technical explanation, but the reality is when this comes as a comprehensive report looking for our support, I'll be looking for some commitment for playground, play space. Thank you. I believe that's it for now.
I yield
Thank
the
you.
chair to you.
Thank you. So, seeing no further questions from the committee, we'll now open this up for public comment. If anybody wishes, there are a series of microphones. If you want to just move to the closest microphone, identify yourself and give your address, and you have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank the committee for giving me this opportunity to voice my concerns. My name is Catherine Sant. I live at 321 Boxwood Street. My husband, Paul, and I moved to this address in October 2015 after we were retired. We were aware at the time that there would be development in the area behind our property, but we were under the impression it would be townhouses. Our main area of concern pertains to the parcel known municipally as 847 Development Drive. Here are our concerns regarding the new development. The plan indicates that a snow storage area will be situated behind our property against the fence. I'm concerned that this will be a considerable amount of snow from 2 parking lots. There is a ditch along the fence at the back of our property, which is lower than the property grade of 847 Development Drive. I fear that when the snow melts, it will collect in that ditch and possibly cause damage to our property and the fence. The height of the apartment building is a concern. We feel we will be overlooked, creating a loss of privacy and reducing our quality of life. We also feel that the pitched roof on the apartment building unnecessarily adds to the height of the building. Another concern is the noise from the parking lot, such as car doors closing, locking and unlocking of vehicles, headlights at night, and idling cars. This could be a problem at all hours of the day and night, reducing our quality of life. Lighting in the parking area is also a concern for us. If the lighting is on all night, this could disturb our sleep and reduce our quality of life. We are saddened by the fact we will be losing green space and views at the back of our property and the effects this will have on wildlife. Here are my questions for the committee. Will there be any landscaping next to the fence between the properties on Boxwood Street and the parking lot for 847 Development Drive to screen the view for privacy concerns? Would it be possible to see the landscaping plan when it is available? Will there be a perspective drawing of the property being built at 847 Development Drive? Would it be possible to see that also? I'm also concerned about how well the property might be maintained in the future. And finally, what is the height of the proposed garages? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I should have mentioned that all of the questions are gathered and then responded to either by our staff or by the proponent at the end. So if there's another person that wishes to speak, and anybody from this side, if you want to just wave at me and grab one of these mics here if you choose to.
Good evening. My name is Chris Hargreaves. I'll try again. Is that better in terms of hum? Okay. My name is Chris Hargreaves. I'm the chair of the Conservation Committee of the... Testing. I'll sit back and shout. So, my name, if you did not yet catch it, is Chris Hargreaves. And I'll shout. I am the chair of the Conservation Committee for the Kingston Field Naturalists. I have listened with interest and a lot of sympathy to the concerns expressed by councillors and the neighbour, but I will confine my comments to those which relate to the environmental protection area, as this is the area of concern and expertise, and in this case, experience of the Kingston Field Naturalists. Councillor Sanik made reference to previous hearings with regard to this site in 2013 and 2015. I remember them well. And in 2015, there was a concern that the official plan talked about a minimum setback of 30 metres from all water bodies, which was not going to be implemented on this site. And the bylaw passed in 2015 gave much less setbacks, a minimum of 6 metres from the 1 to 100-year floodplain of Little Cataraqui Creek, a minimum of 9.3 metres from the toe of the slope of the creek, or a minimum of 15 metres from the edge of the wetland. Having participated in the debate leading to those being set, I was very interested to hear what are the setbacks for the current development. And not only have they not been mentioned, there was a comment from the applicant that he didn't know if the 15-metre setback was being respected. I am concerned, having spent 2 previous hearings here, that what was passed by the council as a compromise then is being respected, or is we being asked for another compromise to the compromise to the compromise. A second concern is with regard to stormwater management. The proposal is for 249 parking spots. Come the summer, when we get our inevitable summer thunderstorms, that's going to be an awful lot of water falling on a very large piece of asphalt. Where is that water supposed to go? There is no reference in the public meeting documents to stormwater management. There is a comment that when the proposal was submitted, it included a, quote, preliminary stormwater management analysis. Is that it? What is supposed to happen to that stormwater? It seems, given the nature of gravity, it is either going to go into that lady's backyard or it is going to the creek and affect the environmental protection area. Nothing has been said about that. And what also concerns me, given what is missing from this application, is the comment that, if we look at page 12, the application, no, I've lost the spot here. The application was deemed complete on November the 5th, 2018, at which point the clock for approval by council starts ticking, and council has 150 days to approve it. That's up on April the 4th. There are 14 days left. there is no stormwater management proposal. And so my question to the planners is, why was this application deemed complete on November the 5th, when it's obviously missing information, and council is now in a position of having to make a decision within 14 days? Why not wait until an application is really complete and then start the top clicking? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody from this side that would like to speak or make a comment? Seeing none, we'll go back to this side.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Frank Dixon, 495 Alfred, Apartment 2, K7K, 4J4. So I don't live in the district, and I guess I'm supportive in principle of the development. I've got some concerns that have already been raised by the committee and some by citizens, and I'm going to omit the ones that have already been covered, so I'll just hit the new ones. I'm wondering what was the previous development on the site, if there was any, and then going on from that, if there are any brownfield considerations that are resulting with this proposal and its interaction with what has been there. Okay, I'm going to follow on from what Mr. Hargraves was talking about with the drainage, environmental aspects, the slopes, stormwater management, and so forth. And I don't see any topographic information provided in the agenda package tonight. There is illustration of a, I guess, a creek bed that's going through there, and the drainage flowing a certain way. So that's obviously interacting with what you're going to be doing. I'm going to follow on to, again, what Mr. Hargis was talking about. Since this is a new proposal, right, does it fall under the revised official plan, which was brought through by council after extensive consultation and then passed by the province, I believe in 2017? And that's with respect, I guess, specifically to the ribbon of life, which was discussed extensively during those consultations, and I believe it was 30 meters. So Mr. Hargraves talked about that as well. And I guess one hasn't been covered yet is the possibility of having some of the parking to be included inside the buildings. That is an awful lot of asphalt there. Mr. Hargraves spoke very well about the rainfall that's coming there, the snow as well. The neighbor was talking about that. And what's there now, if you have basically soil that's absorbing rainfall and snowfall, and then that's going to be covered over either with the building itself, which is large, and the parking that's going to be there. So it's a very big change for the sector that's there. And I really think that has to get more detailed examination. And again, Mr. Hargraves hit the deadline that's coming up. That's very important information for this committee and for council. It's really creating what amounts to an emergency situation, in my view. Council has declared a climate emergency in Kingston, and a couple of years ago, we had a 100-year summer rainfall situation, getting more extreme events with climate change occurring. So we need to coordinate the high-level thinking that Council has bravely, in my view, passed with the on-the-ground development that this proposal is part of. So I'll just say I'm supportive in principle. It's a complex project, and we definitely need more housing in Kingston. So I would like to see something go ahead, but I think more care has to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you. You timed that well. I was about to say 30 seconds. Thank you very much. Yes, if you'd care to just go to a mic, and red actually means you're on. It's a little confusing, and green means you're off.
That's right. Yeah, my name is Les Lafferty. I am an elder at the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses, 849 Development Drive. And first off, we have no objections to the residential units that are go in there. People need a place to live. What our concern is the security element. The full east portion of our building, of our property, and the southern are all exposed to the new development area. We have no fences there, and so our concern is once the properties are developed, is there going to be fences put in to give our properties security? Otherwise, with the number of people there and young people, there could spill over onto our property, and we have experienced over the years, the 32 years we've been here, cases of vandalism. We're concerned about that, or people spilling over, young people spilling over onto the property. For example, we have a large parking lot. It would just be an ideal place for ball hockey and basketball and that. And so, of course, it's a concern of ours, insurance-wise, of any responsibility that we would have for people being on our property that really shouldn't be there. So that's what we'd like to know.
Thank you much. Both our staff and the proponent, unless there's somebody else that wishes to speak that hasn't, I don't want to cut anybody off. Seeing none, I'll give our staff and the proponent an opportunity to address those questions. Then we'll go back into the committee for further questions.
Yes. So thank you everyone for the comments. We really appreciate the feedback that we received tonight. We'll certainly be evaluating that as we go forward with our revised submissions. So I'm going to respond to the comments by individual as best as I can. So I will start with the resident of 321 Boxwood Street first. So you have expressed some concerns about the snow storage area next to your rear yard, your backyard, and you're concerned about the snow that would be stored from that parking lot, potentially melting and causing issues with your backyard. So there will be a drainage and stormwater management plan to ensure there are no adverse impacts. We'll also go back to our architect and our engineering team to see if perhaps there's another spot we can put that snow storage area. With respect to the height and the specific concerns regarding the pitched roof, we'd be happy to maybe explore that further. With respect to lighting impacts, there has been a photometrics plan prepared, which is available on Dash, and it does indicate that the lighting will not spill over beyond a reasonable level to the adjacent residents. With respect to green space, perhaps there will be a buffer provided between the parking lot and the rear yard residential areas. As staff had mentioned, we are going to be adhering to a planting buffer strip as part of the zoning, and there'll be a landscape plan prepared as part of that, and that will be uploaded to Dash, and we're happy to share that information with the public and see if they have some comments on maybe some specific things they would like there in regarding the layout of the plan. With the townhouse lots, the height of the optional garages, I don't have an answer for you on that this evening. I will go back to our client and see if he still has an interest in preparing those garages. They were identified as optional. If he does indeed decide to go forward with those, we can certainly share that information, including elevations of what those garages would look like with the public and be uploaded to Dash for the review. With respect to the field naturalist, you have noted you had concerns with the natural heritage features on the property. With respect to the setbacks of the development, I will be clear, we are not amending or revising anything beyond what was approved as part of the previous development. So you had correctly mentioned the 6.1 plus 9 plus 15. There's also a PSW setback. If you have any other comments specifically regarding the natural heritage elements, we would be happy to hear those from you and perhaps take a look at them further. The stormwater management plan, there has been a stormwater management report submitted as part of the zoning and as well as part of the site plan approval application, which is a much more detailed stormwater management report. That plan, including any drawings, including grading, which does identify contours, is available on Dash for the public to review. And I would be happy to see any comments they may have on that. And of course, pre-development will match post, as in accordance with good stormwater management principles. With respect to the question of previous development on the site in terms of brownfields, I'm certainly glad you asked that question. I took a look at that as well. We actually did have a Phase 2 ESA prepared as part of the previous development application. This, as far as the Phase 2 identified, it was previously used for residential at one point. Phase 2 ESA indicated that the property is safe to go forward for residential uses. Again, with respect to topographical information, the grading, servicing reports, and stormwater management reports, including the detailed site plan drawings, are available on Dash. Does this application have to conform with the most recent version of the official plan? Yes, it is a new application under the Planning Act, so it must conform with the most recent legislation. Our planning justification report does speak to that. If you have any comments on analysis we could add, we're happy to look at that further. And possibility of parking to be included inside the building, that's something that we can explore further with our client to see if he may be interested in that or not. And with regards to climate change, so I had asked the applicant before attending the meeting this evening what green measures would he be incorporating into the development. So this will be a wood frame building. So wood frame does have a lower carbon footprint than traditional steel and concrete construction measures. They'll also be looking at providing electrical parking spaces as required by the Ontario Building Code. As respect to our neighbors to the east, the witness hall, yes, we would certainly be happy to hear any comments or thoughts you have on perhaps maybe putting fencing or landscaping measures in there. Please send us your comments and perhaps we can have a dialogue on that of some of the things you'd be looking to include on there. And that concludes my responses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I believe staff had some comments as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Further to the commentary and responses provided from the applicant, I just wanted to add 2 or 3 quick things from a staff point of view, and specifically address the comment around lighting. In addition to the photometrics plan that has outlined what's anticipated to occur on the site and on the adjacent sites, it's common practice within the city of Kingston is that's a plan that's registered on title through our site plan control agreement. And we also have specific conditioning within the agreement that should any adverse impacts that were not anticipated through that photometrics analysis result after the fact, the applicant bears the cost and the responsibility to address any of those to ensure that that spillage is not adversely affecting any of the neighbors. I also, the second point that I'd like to provide some clarification on was a specific regarding the application's completeness date, dating back to 2018 and only allowing the committee or council, that matter, 14 days from now to make a decision. That is correct with respect to November 2018, November 5th, 2018, as to when the application was deemed complete. Municipalities in Ontario, under our provincial guidance, are required to deem applications complete when an application has been made that requires all of the required submitted material as prescribed through pre-application, et cetera. The application was received and all the material was provided, so our 30-day opportunity to provide the letter of complete application was satisfied. Following the completion date, the applicant had revised the proposal. Some members of the community will recall through some of the conversations I had early on with an alternative development plan at the front of the site that was adjacent to Development Drive on the 809 site. It was not always proposed to be 3-story townhomes that were 18 units. It was a little less dense from that perspective. There was a concept that included retaining that existing single-family dwelling. So until the full understanding provided from the applicant as to what the overall plan was moving forward with both 809 and 847, this meeting was essentially held until that time, so that another statutory public meeting would not then be required should a modification to a plan be needed. Hence the reason of delay between November and to date.
Thank you for that information. I'll now go back into committee. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through a few more questions. On the far southern end of the development, we've heard mention of the garbage enclosures or the optional garages. So let me actually back that up. There are optional garages, which may or may not happen. Will the garbage enclosure happen for sure, should it go forward as proposed?
Yeah, we have to provide a garbage enclosure because there's a number of units will be privately serviced to pick up the garbage. That will be appropriately screened through site plan control. It will be likely fenced. If members of the public or committee have comments on what they would like to see there or further details, we'd be happy to provide that.
All right, and on the note of pickup, will trucks come in through the parking lot to pick up garbage at that location, or will the garbage be moved to the curb by some other means?
Yeah, I don't know that for sure. I imagine that they would come in, but I will check with our client and get back to the committee on that.
That'd be helpful, considering noise in the parking lot. That'd be very helpful. Two more quick questions. You had mentioned, again through you, Mr. Chair, the ability to look at where the snow will be put. If not along the western border, where are the other locations where it could be moved to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. I have the same question. I have to get back to my engineer and architect, and we'll evaluate some options and get back to the committee and the public on that.
Thank you. And a question for staff through you, Mr. Chair, about the grading of the site and the ditch that is again on the western periphery here. Is staff confident that the drainage in that area would be adequate should the snow be placed where proposed at this point?
Through you, Mr. Chair. To answer that question at this date and time, no, because, and the reason I say that is a full technical review that includes our colleagues in engineering who specifically have stormwater engineers on staff, have not provided full commentary and confirmation. So until I have that confirmation, I would not be bringing a recommendation forward with a report to identify that as a viable solution or viable location for such storage.
Thank you. And final question, which I know is available in Dash for those of us who have not had time to get to Dash and go through every document. Just for the record, how many trees will be lost if this development goes through?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know the specific number. There is an arborist report, and it does identify the number. What I can tell you is we're not removing any of the trees in the environmental protection area, which is where the majority of the trees are located. There were some cedars and things planted as part of the existing home on 809 Development Drive. Those will have to be removed to accommodate the townhomes. If the members of the public or the committee have comments on that arborist report, particularly tree inventory, we'd be happy to have ongoing dialogue on that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Yes, Councillor Hutchison.
I've got 2 or 3 questions for staff. I didn't hear, I don't think I heard, and if I did, I apologize, but I want to hear it again, I guess. A response to why there was no stormwater management report.
Through you, Mr. I apologize if I didn't address that earlier. There was a report provided which was titled Servicing Report and Preliminary Stormwater Management Analysis in support of the zoning bylaw amendment that we're discussing here tonight. although it is titled Preliminary Stormwater Management Report, that is very common practice for technical submissions of at zoning bylaw amendment stage. Through site plan application processing, the detailed stormwater analysis reporting is completed. In this case specifically, the applicant has advanced applications for site plan control, so this detailed stormwater work has been completed and is publicly available, although not referenced directly within the staff report you have in front of you today.
Okay, so will we find out where the water is going? Is that part of the report?
If the question is, will you have confirmation with respect to stormwater management before being brought or required or asked to vote and make a decision on this, the answer is yes. And that would be holistically reviewed through our technical analysis and built into and accompany our staff recommendation in the zoning stages.
Okay, now, concerns, and I was a citizen as well, is in the view of staff, is the EPA area protected? At the minimum, that's the 15-meter setback, but I want to know if it's actually protected as it stands.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I understand the question correctly, does the development as proposed and detailed on the screen fully comply with the EPA policies of the official plan to a level of satisfaction? The answer is I haven't done that thorough review yet to come to that conclusion. It will be done in advance of having a comprehensive report.
That's good. Now, there's probably a technical answer to this question. I just don't perceive it myself here. And that is, how far is the block part, the 25-meter peaked roof block of the development, how far is that from Development Drive? And then my following question was, how far is it from the boxwood backyard fence? It's got to do with overlook and noise. So sometimes you can argue.
Okay. Sorry about the delay. The building is essentially a Z shape or Z shape, where in the midpoint of that Z is the highest point of the building. That's the boxy part that I think we're referring to. That's approximately 62 meters from Development Drive. From the rear property line of the parcels that front Boxwood, that midpoint is approximately 18 meters, if I recall correctly with my quick math. I could be off. Further than that? Okay, sorry.
So you'll be evaluating that for overlook, noise?
But from here to here, over
this is 45 meters plus the distance there, so it's probably 90 meters.
Okay, my apologies. We are approximately 90 meters, 90 meters from the rear yard property fence of those Boxwood parcels across the parking lot, across the proposed parking lot to that center of the Z-shaped building, which is the highest point.
And so you might not have heard me because you were discussing it. Will you, you'll be looking at the issues of overlook, noise, and so on, right? And you report back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a key consideration in the official plan policies. It'll be reviewed comprehensively.
And you said that the distance from, well, probably the wall of the center of the Z is about 9 meters? Or 90?
Yeah, 90.
90, okay, fair enough, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Yes.
I do, Mr. Chair, through you, I think it would be helpful if the process could be explained from here on in for the residents who have participated thus far. So the question is, what happens next?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I'm going to answer it starting with the zoning bylaw amendment application, as that's what we're discussing today. But this property has multiple other applications, and you've probably received notifications in your mail and seen signage on site, so I'll speak to those after. Tonight's meeting, as it relates to the zoning bylaw amendment, is a statutory public meeting in which we're looking to obtain input from the members of the community and council or planning committee and those that can take shape to amend the project as needed. Moving forward, staff will compile technical comments from all of internal and external applicable departments, including the CRCA, engineering group from stormwater management perspectives, planning comments to ensure compatibility and overlook, and provide those comments to the applicant through a technical review process. Once the technical review period is complete and staff feel comfortable that public interest has been satisfied and the commentary has been satisfied, we'll prepare a comprehensive report that includes a recommendation on this project and bring it back here to Planning Committee for a vote. When returning to Planning Committee, notification will be provided to all members of the community, the same as which was provided for tonight's meeting, and anybody who signed in or has provided technical comments to myself will be included on that correspondence to ensure that you're aware of that meeting. Planning Committee will make its vote on that recommendation, which would then proceed to council for its ultimate decision. Granted council makes a decision, there's a 20-day appeal period falling out of that decision, which is opportunity for the members of the community or anyone at that to appeal to the local planning appeals tribunal should they disagree with such decision. Granted, if we make it through that whole process, the zoning would then be potentially in place, depending on the way it unfolded. That's the zoning bylaw process. I want to now touch base on the consent. There's a consent application for a lot addition that's on the site, and that's been submitted and is being processed concurrently with this zoning amendment to date. So as we've differentiated here tonight, there's two separately conveyable parcels. One's 809 Development Drive, the other of which is 847 Development Drive. Currently, 809 Development Drive, which is a smaller parcel with the most frontage on the public street, is quite large, and the applicant is proposing to convey a portion of that rear yard to the other site to accommodate some of the surface parking lot, as well as portions of the larger apartment building at the rear. So it's a lot line adjustment to facilitate that transfer of ownership. That application is essentially been held in abeyance at this time until further detail, such as the location of the buildings, the parking, etc., has been more refined. So it's not yet complete. As the applicant has mentioned earlier, applications for site plan control have also been submitted for this property. There will be two separate applications for site plan control, one which will apply to the townhomes on the front and one which would apply to the multi-res apartment building at the rear. Staff have received the application for the multiple residential unit at the rear of the property, and that's currently under review and subject to technical comments similar to what was explained for zoning. So you will see signage on the site for all of that suite of applications, and if you sign into our Dash system to try to obtain some further insight into this, you'll see the 3 different applications are currently being processed.
And would you?
I take the chair.
Thank you very much. A couple of comments. Since, as we've all heard, I hope, we've declared a climate emergency. And that means that every time something comes through planning or whatever, we should look at it through a climate change lens. And we have a number of things in our official plan that are recommendations saying you should do this, but they don't necessarily say yet, you shall do this. And that's something that we need to review. A couple of things that come to mind here. One of them is the whole question of the hard surface and concerns about stormwater management. And one of the recommendations, I believe, in the OP recognizes that there are porous hard surfaces that are available that cost slightly more to install, but they indeed they allow water not just to flow off the hard surface, but to actually stay on the site, a fairly large percentage of that water. I would strongly recommend, and I'll ask at the comprehensive report stage whether that has been implemented. The other thing is, with the ever-increasing number of electric cars, it's my understanding that it costs less than $100 to install at the time of construction, and it costs hundreds of dollars to retrofit that. And I would hope that a number of those, in fact, are installed at the time of construction. Quick question for staff. It's my understanding that one of the considerations for storm management is none of the adjoining properties should receive any additional water flow from a development. And that typically is ensured either by a peer review or by a city consultant. Will that be taking place on this site once we get the final stormwater management?
Yeah, through you, absolutely. It's that detailed stormwater analysis report that we're referring to earlier on in the evening that would be included as part of the site plan control submission. It is, in this case, a technical document that would be reviewed internally by our engineering group and our stormwater engineering staff, and not a peer review through an external agency, but it would most definitely be reviewed by a qualified professional.
Thank you very much. I'm also on MAC, which is Municipal Accessibilities Advisory Committee. I'm curious if some of these units in either the apartment or the townhouses are being planned to be accessible units, and how many accessible parking spaces, fully accessible parking spaces with the wider and the ability for a wheelchair to be offloaded or unloaded onto a van. Did you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so the The proposed development will be designed to meet in compliance with the Ontarians with Disabilities Accessibility Act. So we've actually provided the Type A and Type B accessible parking spaces as required by the OREG, which are much more stringent than the zoning bylaw standards, which are out of date. And that provides for van accessible parking spaces with appropriate signage and a 1.5 meter aisle in between them so people can get their wheelchairs and things out like that. In regards to accessible units, I'll ask my client if the ground, typically those are more accessible, so we can certainly provide a response to that question. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I will be asking that question again at the comprehensive. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. If I could, just to further the commentary from the applicant, 9 accessible parking spaces that are proposed on the site, which does comply with the AODA requirements, which I will politely point out that our bylaws have been updated to include the newest provisions and policies of AODA parking. That 4 of which are Type A, which are the larger 3.7 meter wide spaces, and 5 of which are the Type B spaces.
Thank you. My final comment is that this is a fairly complex development, and there is indeed a lot of things that have been brought up, whether it's a fence, snow removal, parking, all of those things are site plan issues which on routine applications are delegated to staff, and staff do a good job of addressing those issues. But there is a process called a site plan bump up, and it usually happens, I'm looking to staff so I don't misspeak here, but it usually happens at the comprehensive report stage, not usually beforehand. And what it is a motion gets moved and seconded, goes to council, and if it's passed, and in my living memory, it's never not been passed, then the site plan report is bumped up back to planning, and it gives the public an opportunity to see democracy at work and us addressing those concerns. Is that fairly accurate?
Through you, Mr. Chair, typically we see a lot of applicants going through the full rezoning process first prior to submitting a site plan application to ensure that their detailed design work isn't advancing too far ahead of what is approved through the rezoning. So often those bump up motions are separated because we don't have the benefit of having the concurrent applications running at the same time. So in this scenario, certainly since we've received the application for site plan control on this property, members of council would have the opportunity to bump it up to planning committee for approval at any point in the approval process. It can certainly happen at the time of a future comprehensive report if we get to that stage on this application, or it could happen prior to that or following that. Any time prior to the approval of that site plan application, council certainly has the opportunity to bump it up.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. Whenever I ask the questions about bump up, I always see some planners rolling their eyes because it is a little added work to our planning department, but I think it's a good public process. So thank you.
Yield the chair to you.
Thank you. So I will now declare this public meeting closed. I want to thank everybody for a very civil discussion. So we'll now move on to, I guess I can do that from here. Pardon me? Yeah. We'll now move on to our regular business, and there are no reports for approval, but there is a process. Let me just get back to the right page here. Thank you. So I'll call this meeting to order. I need a mover and a shaker for approval of the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Osanek. All those in favor? Carried. Confirmation of minutes. Thank you, Councillor Osanek. Thank you, Councillor Hill. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Delegations? Seeing none. Briefings, we have none. Business, we have none. Any motions or notices of motion? Seeing none. Other business, we have received in our addendum a number of correspondence. Any comments or questions? Again, seeing none. Date and time of our next meeting. April 4th at 6:30 p.m. So everybody's favorite word, motion to adjourn. Pick of the litter, everybody raised their hands. All those in favor already voted. Thank you very much.